All right, guys, Gunfighter Carbine. Look, I'm going to talk to you guys about the 4 fundamentals of Gunfighter Carbine that we communicate in our gunfighting carbine course. Look, the field application of practically applying this stuff in real life cannot be underestimated and cannot be underutilized. You need to make sure you go out and you actually physically train. The cool thing about these blocks of instruction that I'm doing for you guys at locals, but also on Fieldcraft Survival, is that you guys can get all the basic understanding of the philosophy and why we teach what we teach, and then practically apply it at a training course coming to you this year. We're all over the nation this year. We're on the East Coast, the West Coast, and everywhere in between. But again, I can't highlight this enough. You have to get out and train to actually apply this. But today we're focusing on fundamentals of gunfighting. All right, guys, so the first fundamental of gunfighting is stance and grip. The reason we combine the two is because I want you to understand that they're synonymous. They go together hand in hand. You can't stand properly with an M4 or a carbine and not understand how to effectively grip that weapon system. So we combined the two in stance and grip. What I'm going to do with my beautiful, lovely instructor or assistant instructor, Addison, is I'm going to have him line out some positioning so you could see it while I talk you through it. The first thing I want to demonstrate is that a carbine is not a deer rifle. We automatically assume, because we're taught in positioning to shoot carbines like rifles, that it is that. The difference is if you take a 300 Win Mag deer rifle and you stand up with it and shoot it like a carbine standing erect, straight up and down, you're not going to fare really well. One, you're going to have a long reset of the muzzle flipping and the gun recoiling before you get back down on target if the scope doesn't hit you in the face. But a carbine, you could afford that. You could afford that in the way that it operates. So the first thing is, go ahead and get on target, is I want you to see how this gun cycles in its operation. One, we got a bolt carrier group that's inside the upper receiver that's going to reciprocate back into the mil-spec tube, which has 5 points of adjustment. There's a buffer and buffer spring, or it's a buffer spring assembly, but the buffer is going to buffer all of the energy in the back of the tube so you don't have actual recoil. So what I want you to do, Addison, is I want you to present the gun with one hand and I want you to shoot it. And what we're going to show you in slow motion is how the gun cycles and then how much recoil there isn't with a carbine. Go ahead. So if you see how the gun actually muzzle flips and recoils, every major gun is going to muzzle flip. We have a brake or a compensator on the front end of this one. This one's running an AAC can. So you're going to have slight muzzle flip. A lot of that could be dissipated via a brake or a compensator. But when you look at the recoil, what you see is the actual rear of the gun coming down almost. So there's not a lot of rearward movement. So the idea with shooting a rifle is that you would barricade it to your shoulder. So getting a traditional barricaded position, that's a traditional barricaded position for shooting a rifle. Except we just determined that you don't have to barricade your body to manage all this recoil. When I was taught in the infantry, I was taught to getting a fighting stance because you needed to get aggressive. And whether that was mindset or physically holding the gun in position, it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. And so the great advantage of this gun is the speed in which you could operate it standing up and erect. So the first thing I'm going to do is have him bring the gun up online, right? So if you notice, there's no inputs that he's putting into his body position. Now, he's using a 1:6 Vortex Razor HD. This particular scope is a little bit closer to the bore line, meaning the mount isn't that high. So he's going to have to find the eye relief in the optic. Go ahead and find the eye relief. There it is. Okay, if you notice a couple things. One, the position of the buttstock is actually above the shoulder weld. Remember, this doesn't have to be barricaded to prevent you from mismanaging recoil, because there is none. So it's a couple inches above, it's on his cheek, and his natural body position is not into the gun, meaning he's not physically putting inputs into the gun. That's important because we don't want to negatively influence the actual weapon system. We are the weak sauce in this whole equation. So if we're overemphasizing physical variables on the gun, we're making it more inaccurate. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about in stance is the position he needs to be standing in. So here's the diagnostic that I teach my guys when I'm teaching on the flat range. All right, I want you to stand shoulder width apart, facing the target. Okay, I want you to bring the gun up to the target, but ergonomic. So if he was ergonomic, the rifle will be slightly offset, right? Because if he turns his body while his feet are together, he's going to put some physical inputs into the gun or into his body that stress it. That's not ergonomic, right? But if I tell him to get relaxed and to get more ergonomic, I want him to step back with his dominant foot. Lean forward with your non-dominant knee, and that's going to set his position to be naturally aligned with the actual threat or the target. Go ahead, relax your arms. So now we see that his foot position is this way. Now listen, this is a flat range-ism, but what we're doing is we're isolating the fundamentals to get better in practice by mastering the basic skill sets. So I want him to be in this position. Why? Because not that I think that when he's going to get in a gunfight, he's going to pop off and immediately transform into that, but that's the desired position. One, it allows me to manage the barrel aligned with the target. Two, it allows me to traverse my target line from my left limit to my right limit. Third, and finally, and probably most importantly for me, is it allows him to load a portion of his body that is able to pounce off of his contracted muscle as opposed to being locked. Like standing locked and erect is not advantageous for movement because what I have to do is I have to unlock, load, and then explode. So in this case, if I'm already loaded, my leg is contracted, then all I have to do to initiate movement is contract and explode off that leg. I'm already loaded on it. So that position is super important. The next thing I'm going to talk to you is the portion of where stance translates into grip. All right, so go ahead, bring the gun up on target. So if you notice this part of his body, man, you're getting swole, man. You working out, man? A little bit. So this part of his body is ergonomic. What I mean in ergonomic is, one, he's not like this, because that would be not ergonomic, meaning he's physically stressing his body for no reason. That's a natural position. You don't hand somebody a beer and go, hey, here's your beer, or here's your beer. You have it in a natural set position. That's natural. Also, if you take the measurement between the stock and where it meets his shoulder, the measurement is taken from the groove of his elbow to the grip of the gun. You can simply look at it just like that. That's how you measure the appropriate length for it being ergonomic. You don't want to be overextended and you don't want to be underextended. So perfect position. The next part of this is this hand. So in this set position, I have his C-clamp hand. Now, the important aspect of C-clamp are many. There are many variables which make this super important. But when you see this position, the alternative is to have it underextended and to have the elbow drop low. That is not efficient, especially when traversing from target to target. So I want him extended on the rail. I want him to hold a tight grip on the top thumb and the bottom forefinger. This is also going to help me control muzzle flip, which is important because if I have too much muzzle flip and I have to reset in between target sets with a visual shot process, then it's too slow in between shots. We don't want to do that. I want to be able to snap the shot, break the shot, and continue to shoot in the same position. Having that C-clamp forward on the rail is going to help with that. All right, so I'm going to do two things for you to demonstrate this. One, I want you to take your palm flat underneath the stock. Yep, and then no grip, essentially just shooting it off a platform. He's going to shoot 3 rounds off this, and I want you to track the front end of the barrel. Go ahead. Versus C-clamping, aggressively grabbing the front end of it and doing 3 shots. So I could see the transition from behind my students, and the way you track this is through your optics. So if you have a reticle or you have a red dot, just track the red dot and what it does in the pattern of movement. Simple C-clamping the front end of the gun is going to help you control the muzzle flip through the duration. All right. So the next thing I wanted to show you is the speed in which you're driving from target to target. So the first target we're going to shoot is, let's go with the target over here, and then driving and snapping the gun onto the target. All right. On the command of threat, you're going to drive it from there and then snap it right onto the paper target. Shooter ready, stand by. Threat. Good. Do one more time. Shooter ready, stand by. Threat. Good. Relax. All right, so traversing from target to target, he's able to now break down his hand and ergonomically break the gun down into position. If you're swinging the gun with your elbow lowered, that is not a natural position. Like even when you point things out to people, you don't go, hey, what's that? What's that? No, you go, what's that? What's that? What's that? The coolest thing I think about C-clamp is the ability for you to think driving your physical body instead of driving just the optic. Because if I told you to snap the gun to a position, like snapping it to this target and find the red dot and then break the shot, that's a complicated shot process. But if I say, hey, if you make a C-clamp and the barrel of your gun is in between your thumb and your finger and just drive your physical hands to it, you will have the shooting solution there when you drive your hands. So if it's here and I snap it here, well, now I need to figure out, is this the right shooting solution? Well, if it's not, then you need to find it. And then I go, okay, that's not the shooting solution. This is the shooting solution. So now I just practice driving my physical hands from target to target using my eyes or leading with my eyes. The C-clamp is crucial, and also having 2 points of contact to drive it from high carry or from low carry to your set position. Go ahead and get at the depressed gun. Okay, this is a good example of something that's what we call a rangeism. So on a flat range, if I'm practicing driving the gun from this position to the ready up position, for example, we're doing a ready up drill, stand by, ready up. That is just practicing the manipulation or practice of moving it from safe to semi and breaking a shot when the gun's in line. But at which point would you roll with your gun in this position? If you're in this position, you might as well be with the gun aligned or the barrel aligned with the threat. So if you're actually going to be gun depressed, more likely it's going to be because you're at the low carry, or transversely, you're at the high carry. But again, a lot of people practice doing this, but you would never be like this. Because if you would be like this, you might as well be like that. There's no save. The reason you would be at high port or low port is because you're trying to maneuver around obstacles. So the advantage of having a C-clamp on the front end of your gun is to control, with 2 points of contact, of snapping it on target from high port or from low port. Let's practice a couple low ports and then we'll practice a couple high ports. Shooter ready, stand by. Threat. Stand by. Threat. All right, we're gonna do high port. Stand by. Threat. Stand by. Threat. Good. So when we're setting up for high port or low port, you need to understand that it's used to clear obstacles. But the advantage of having 2 points of contact is snapping the gun into position as opposed to moving or driving the gun up into position, like a tank. Like having 1 point of contact hinged off of your shoulder, swinging the gun up or down is not only slow, but you're at a disadvantage when manipulating around obstacles, including your own teammates, especially if you're doing like close quarters battle and you're trying to get around obstacles and people. All right, let's talk about the primary hand. What I want you guys to do right now, and you guys have done this on Gunfighter pistols, I want you to make a grip with your strong hand. Go ahead and make a tight grip. And as you're squeezing it tight, I want you to manipulate your trigger finger. That's super slow, super cumbersome. Go ahead and relax your hand. Now just take your hand and hold it together, and now manipulate your trigger finger. A lot faster, right? It's because you're not over gripping the gun. Well, when I was taught to shoot a carbine in the infantry, I was taught grip down on the gun and squeeze it to the rear. Well, that's just counterproductive in the first place, because if recoil goes to the rear and up, why would I pull back on the thing that's going to go back anyway? I'm only enabling recoil. So I need to be able to run this hand lightly. So we do what's called a diagnostic. So I'm going to talk Addison through the diagnostic on how we do it and how we break it down. Now, you'll probably do this and you'll shortcut it. If you do it and you shortcut it, you're missing the point. The point of mastering basic fundamentals is doing every single thing by the minutia, one specific detail at a time, and not skipping or glossing over each individual step. This is how you master basics. All right, so go ahead, feet shoulder width apart. Step back with your dominant foot. Lean forward, non-dominant knee. Bring the gun on target. C-clamp, forward grip of the gun. Elbow parallel with the surface of the ground. Light grip, go ahead and let go of your dominant hand. Shake your fingers. Apply a light grip. We're going to shoot 5 rounds on the target at combat speed. On target. Shooter ready, stand by. Threat. Good, relax. So that's a good basic diagnostic. What I allow him to do is shoot the target fast to prove to you guys, or to prove to him that he's shooting and he's not overgripping the gun. And the transition or translation of that is the proximity of the shot placement on the actual target. I'm not overemphasizing accuracy. I'm having him drive the gun as fast as he can, 5 shots on the target while holding the stable position. If we want to amplify this, we'll start going into different variations of this. So I would do 5 rounds on one target, 5 rounds on another target, and driving the gun from left to right. I would do high port and low port, snapping the gun from low port to on target 5 rounds, breaking it off, doing the same thing from high port onto the target 5 rounds. That covers stance and grip. Let's move on. All right, so we're moving on and we're talking about trigger control. Most often trigger control is neglected because it's just a natural assumption. It's like, if you want to shoot, you got to pull the trigger anyway. What people forget is, as you're shooting a multiple string of fire, like multiple rounds during a multiple string engagement, if you don't have a process for that, you're going to biff it. A lot of people misunderstand that people, like even slow shooters, inherently run faster than the cycle of operation of a gun. Like, for example, this carbine, Addison can outrun this gun. His trigger finger can move faster than it cycles and resets. And so if he doesn't understand that and he has no process, he's bound to biff the shot sequence. Now, what does biffing sound like? Well, biffing typically sounds like a disruption in cadence. Like if I was going to give him a 5-shot string, it would be pop, 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 or pop, 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 pop. You get 3 rounds here, 2 rounds here, 2 rounds here, 3 rounds here. It's because as he's pulling the trigger in mechanical reset, as he goes to search for that reset, he maybe misses it and then hiccups in cadence, and then he finds it and then he breaks the shot. Well, the problem with that is if you look at 5 rounds inconsistent in the overall shot sequence, one miss is equal to a couple of potential hits versus it being optimized in cadence, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or bop, 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 where it's 0.17, 0.18, 0.17, 0.18, where the overall time is going to be super fast, like a second and a quarter, or 1.15 for 5 shots on the target. It also translates to inaccuracy and a lack of speed. So if we're more efficient in cadence, we're going to be more efficient in accuracy, and we're going to be potentially faster in that efficiency. So what I'm going to do as a drill is demonstrate how to implement this skill set. What I like to do is, when I'm on a range with my students, is I'll pick somebody, and I'll typically pick the person who thinks they're the fastest, and then I'll allow them to shoot as fast as they possibly can. And this is an exaggeration of this because Addison knows this drill, but this is typically what it sounds like. All right, shooter ready? Go in left target. And we're going to shoot as fast as we could possibly shoot 5 rounds. Shooter ready, stand by. Threat. Good. So he shot 6 total rounds. When you're not counting rounds and when you're disconnected from your head, you go, oh yeah, I got this, watch this. Boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh, what happened? Well, what happened is kind of like the ego or emotional center house of our brains took over and we just sent it. But we didn't have a process to execute that. The simple imprinting of the process is how we do it. So if I go to the right target, I say, all right, what I want to do is I'm going to have you shoot 5 rounds. The cadence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Say that out loud.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Go ahead and shoot that. Stand by. Threat. Good. The difference is not only is he more consistent, but he has a process to implement on target. Now, here's the dual benefit of what I'm talking about. 1, speed and accuracy. No brainer. The second component is what you do when you operate under stress, especially during an immediate threat that has to do a transitioning your system into fight or flight. If you have a surge of cortisol in your system and you go into fight or flight, you're going to have a flinch response, especially reacting to an immediate threat, meaning a person with a gun pointed at you. You might go, oh crap. Well, if you have a mechanism or a process to flow into, then you're going to be more efficient on the target because you're conscious. You're not just primarily unconscious in fight, flight, or freeze. So does that mean that you're going to react and go, oh crap, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? No. But what I think what will happen is you'll have a process to revert to. You'll flinch response. Hopefully your flinch response is a click, boom, reacting to the threat. And somewhere along the way, you'll realize that the audible or maybe even the visual reciprocation of the gun in your line of sight is going to bring you back to a cadence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is how we practice this. I'm going to give him the cadence and he's simply going to shoot it. We're going to go, let's go to the 10 spot in the head. All right, the first cadence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Repeat it after me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, slow it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Stand by. Threat. Good. I want to speed it up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ba 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 ba.
Ba 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 ba.
Ba 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 ba.
Ba 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 ba.
That's 6. Ba 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 ba.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ba 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 ba.
Stand by. Threat. All right, so that's a classic example of him hiccuping the shot sequence. So I need to slow him down because he's outrunning his headlights. So, and it's kind of cold too, so to say it phonetically, my lips don't move. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Stand by. Threat. Good. I want you to speed that up and I want you to go ba 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 ba.
Ba 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 ba.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Stand by. Threat. Slow. Get the imprint in your head. Don't say it out loud. And then we're going to replicate that. Stand by. Threat. Good. So if you notice the hiccup on the tail end, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. What that's telling me is he needs more practice on consciously imprinting the sound out loud into action, right? That's what we're doing here is we're creating a conscious connection between what we're thinking and then what we apply with our physical body. This is how performance athletes win. They win because they're more rhythmic in their cadence of transitioning what's in their head versus or correlated to what they're doing physically. So if you take a swimmer, for example, who's stroking through the water and breathing in cadence, the more efficient they are, the more rhythmic and in cadence they are, the more likely they are faster and then more efficient in the water, lending itself to speed and then potential accuracy. So this translates not only in shooting and becoming more accurate and fast, but also in the worst case scenario of you being overwhelmed with stress and fight or flight. The next thing we're going to talk about is alignment. And alignment has to do with your ability to align the correct solution using the weapon system in alignment with the target. I know that might sound complicated or oversimplified, but what I mean is instead of the idea of transitioning the gun on the target looking for the optic, the idea should be in a rapid scenario where you're confronted with immediate threat, you should be able to snap the gun to the threat and be able to address the threat in a millisecond, meaning the time it takes for you to go from safe to semi and then break the shot, versus going through the shot process of transitioning your field of view from target to front sight or to red dot optic. The reality is that when you're confronted with immediate threat, meaning a guy pointing a gun at you, you don't have enough time. You have to snap the solution and break the shot and then build upon the foundation which you've presented, which might mean the gun is maybe not all the way aligned with your eyeball, because you don't scan the world looking for threats and self-defense behind your optic, or at least you shouldn't do that. Because when you're doing that, you're narrowing your field of view and you're cutting down your perception of the world around you. I mean, you're literally taking the peripheral vision and narrowly focusing it through or over your optic. You need to keep your eyes open and then be able to address potential threats that you see by identifying them and then presenting the weapon to that solution. So let me give you an example of this. So Addison right now is set up and he's not completely aligned, meaning he's not looking through his optic. He's slightly depressed. But if Addison right now needed to break a shot, he could. Go ahead and break a shot from your current position. Right? Now, there's a difference between him breaking the shot right there in his position and then his position aligned looking through his optic. So go ahead and look through your optic. Break a shot. So now you have two different perspectives. One is he's basically at the high ready, but he still has his field of view over the optic, but he could address the threat in a snapshot. Versus him lifting the gun to target and then being able to address it. Now, the premise behind this is we want to be able to observe the world around us, potentially look for bad guys and identify threats, and then address those same threats. I give the simple example of a Cobra gunship or Apache gunship. When an Apache gunship is flying and he identifies a threat, let's say in this case it's an RPG gunner about to shoot down a Chinook, he does that by identifying the threat and then having the ability of where he looks and identifies targets, the gun is slewed towards that threat. So he looks and he sees a threat, that's a threat, boom, and he hammers a threat. Versus the gun being oriented in this direction, he sees the threat, then he has to traverse the gun. It's too late. So you need to be able to see the threat, identify it, but have something to address it with. In this case, the barrel of the weapon system. My pet peeve is when I'm teaching law enforcement or military or even civilians, when people are clearing with their eyes, they're looking into rooms, but their gun's oriented in this direction. Well, that does you no good when that's an immediate threat, because the only thing you're going to do is see yourself get shot and killed. So you need to be able to look at potential threats and then address those threats by being aligned, meaning the barrel's oriented towards the threat, and then being able to advance your situation, building through the gunfight. You're not going to stop. I see a threat, boom, it's here. Boom, it's here. Boom, it's here. Boom, it's aligned. Now I'm getting behind the optic. Those first couple shots in alignment are probably going to be good, but we're not going to wait for our eyes to catch up. And I hope that makes sense. Here's how we build upon it. We're going to do something called a ready up drill. And he's going to be slightly depressed just like this. And on the command of ready up, he's going to lift the gun and break a shot. Now, when he breaks that shot, he's not waiting for his eyes to catch up. He's going to break the shot as soon as the barrel of the gun's aligned. All right, shooter ready, stand by, ready up, relax. Ready up, ready up, ready up, ready up. Okay, now the evolution of this is I need to break multiple shots. One of the things I always harp on flat ranges is never building a bad training habit by just breaking it and then breaking it off. Because what you're doing is you're instilling a potential bad habit. So we have to quickly evolve this. So now I'm going to have him do 2-shot engagements, meaning he's going to bring it up, pop, pop. But he's not just going to shoot 2 rounds point shooting at the target. He's going to build his situation and the gun and its orientation to his eyes as he shoots those 2 rounds. Maybe on the first round he doesn't have that sight picture, but the second round he should start to pick it up. The third round he definitely should. 4th and 5th round in the shot string he will. Okay, so we'll start off with 2-round engagements. Stand by. Ready up. Good. Ready up. Good. As you can see, as he's not waiting for the gun to settle in his optic or in his eye line, he's breaking the shot and continuing to build on that platform. So now I'm going to evolve it quickly to 5 shots total. So now what you'll see is he'll break that first and it'll be slightly depressed, and then he'll continue to upgrade, and by shots 4 and 5, he should have a clear, definitive sight picture, whether that's the red dot or reticle in the background of his vision. At least he has a point of reference to be able to engage the target. All right, 5 shots. Shoot ready, stand by. Threat. Good. And those last 2 shots were right on the money, right into the T-zone of the head. So the practice of this is called evolving through the gunfight. Remember, when you address a threat, you're not going to identify the threat, get your gun up, get the red dot or the reticle, and then break the shot. That's too slow in reacting to an immediate threat. You have to be able to snapshot it, break the shot, and then evolve and upgrade your situation, but not waiting for your eyes to catch up with the gun. Allow the gun to do its work, and your eyes will eventually catch up. I hope that helps. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, the next thing we're going to talk about is alternate positions. Now, I am a stickler for this because a lot of people who teach alternate position shooting fail to understand that people are not all created equal, especially as they're built. Well, what I mean by that is there's like a couple tacticians in the space who are teaching like everybody who they teach is a Navy SEAL operator. Well, we're not all built like Navy SEALs. And a lot of people, what I've realized, especially in the civilian space, have a lot of disabilities, including myself. Like I'm missing half my right hamstring, and so the way I position my body in alternate positions isn't always the way that Navy SEAL or SF instructor wants me to do it. Also, a lot of tacticians fail to realize that when you're overemphasizing or over communicating alternate positions, you're taking away from the ability for the student to focus their attention on what's happening downrange. Now, I get it, like you want to become efficient in movement, but the best way to become efficient in movement isn't necessarily learning a 5 to 10 step process on how to do an alternate position that we most often do every single day. Like if you ever seen the prone position, shooting from your belly, well, you woke up this morning probably in the prone position. You were sleeping on your stomach or on your back. So you know how to get to that position. You just need to practice doing it with a weapon system. I don't want people to overcomplicate alternate positions. Simply do it more often, and you'll build your own efficiency. And so there's actually a neurological process called tidbits, which is a layman's term for understanding that we have to process information. So if we're learning something like, hey, 5 steps to get into the prone, I'm not focused on potentially the threat downrange. But if I just say, hey, get in the prone, and you do it naturally or primally or ancestrally, how you've always done it before, and then you focus your attention on the shooting aspect, you're going to figure it out. So like this is a great example of this. I'm gonna have Addison here practice moving down to the prone. And here's what I'm gonna say. There's a IPSC target that's downrange. I want you to shoot 2 rounds on that IPSC target downrange. Once you get to the prone and set in your position. You're going to start standing, you're going to get to the prone, and then you're going to shoot 2 rounds. Okay. Shoot it ready? Yep. Go. Good. Stand up. All right, do it again. I want you to do a little bit faster, okay? Stand by. Go. Good. Good. Stand. All right, so he already built his own economy and speed and efficiency in motion by him just doing that. And now we're focused on the shooting, and then the positioning will come. Also, remember, alternate positions is super important to give you an advantage in a potential gunfight, especially using relative immediate cover and concealment. Remember, cover stops potential bullets and has the protection barriers to facilitate that. Concealment masks you from the enemy. So, for example, a vehicle might act as relative cover, meaning it provides some cover, mostly concealment. But bullets can rip through vehicles, so it's not foolproof. Besides, concrete barriers, walls, things of that nature, there's very few things in the world that are going to provide full coverage because you're going to have to expose yourself at some level. But if you reduce your positioning, meaning instead of standing in the open, you take a kneeling position or even a prone position, you are cutting your signature in half or potentially even more so. So the advantage goes to the person who uses alternate positioning and cover and concealment to their advantage. So what I'm going to do is show you how we do it at Fieldcraft at the Gunfighter Carbine course, and simply how I allow the student to figure out the alternate positions that best work for them. Okay, so I'm going to walk Addison through this, and for the sake of ammo conservation for repetitions, I'm going to have him shoot 1 round per alternate position. All right, first position, feet together, feet together. 1 round, shooter ready, stand by, threat. Squatting, squatting. So he's choosing his position of squatting. A lot of people have different versions of how they're going to do that based on their inability or disability in being able to do that. 1 shot, stand by, threat. Kneeling, threat. Prone. Good. Go ahead and sit up and sit down flat on your butt. From seated position, 1 round, stand by, threat. Good. Go ahead and move to your back. Stand by, threat. All right. So now here's a great example of a position where I need to evolve him into the gunfight. Remember, if you're moving from position to position, you're not stopping your gunfight and your shooting during the movement of that position. You need to continue to shoot as you're setting the position. So from this particular case, I'm going to have him move from his back through the duration, continue to shoot into another position. So from your back to sitting up, 3 rounds to the duration. Stand by, threat. Good. Right, so what he did is he continued to move through the duration. And remember, when you're moving to cover and concealment, you have to continue to shoot. You don't want to lull your own gunfight. Suppression is actually a tactic. If you look at FM 7-8, which is the field manual, let's just call it infantry tactics because there's different versions of it for different services. When you suppress the enemy, you're changing the psychology of the gun battle, right? If the alternative is not shooting at all and waiting until you get set, but you could be losing precious moments where one break of 1 shot, even in suppression, meaning it's not as accurate as possible, could get the bad guy's head down or lull the gunfight or potentially put them in a fight or flight mode. Those are the things that you want to optimize, and you have to continue to shoot through the duration in order to win the gunfight. I want to show you something that we teach at Fieldcraft for alternate positions, which is called fetal left or fetal right. Go ahead and get to fetal left for me. All right, so we have a variation of fetal left. So fetal left is when I'm using the obstacle that might be a vehicle or whatever in front of me and hiding behind my weapon system and getting my body in tight and close. Because I might only have the wheel well, or in this case, a wheel of a vehicle that's providing protection. So I need to get very small. Another version of this is taking his knees and tucking them up to his chest. This is literally using your knees and your shins to act as coverage to protect your vital organs in the middle of this gunfight. Remember, if you're fighting behind a vehicle and you're receiving incoming rounds, those rounds are going to be skipping through the vehicle or under the vehicle, turning that shrapnel into projectiles that's going to potentially hurt or even kill you. So every little piece of protection that you have is important. Like I've actually been in gunfights where I've hid behind my gun, thinking in my head, man, if I do get shot, hopefully it's in the gun, in my hands and my arms and not inside my face or my chest. So this is a good tight body position that I need in that alternate position. Again, when I'm setting this from potential fetal left to fetal right, I'm keeping the gun downrange in the fight. This isn't just a safety consideration, it's an alignment consideration. I want to keep the gun oriented in the gunfight, prepared to address any potential threats that I see. I hope that helps, guys. Thanks. All right, guys, the next thing that we talk about after the fundamentals of gunfighting is shooting and moving. Remember, winning a gunfight has to do with the principles of speed and accuracy applied with moving advantageously, right? Shooting and maneuvering is how you win gunfights. I was surprised by training law enforcement all across the nation and how few police academies actually teach the principles of shoot, move, and communicate, which is fire and maneuver, which means, like, how do I move and how do I shoot? What are the tactics there? And there are very defined tactics and small unit tactics, especially in the military, on how to do that, including establishing a base of fire, which is a support by fire position, while other elements potentially maneuver and flank, etc. I don't want to harp on that right now, but what I want to do is I want to talk about how to move and shoot with a weapon system. Because if you're advancing towards a threat, or you're even breaking contact away from a threat, knowing how to do both at the same time are super important. Now, a pistol is easier to do while shooting and moving on the fly because you can isolate your hands in the positions in front of you. The problem with the carbine is you have a buttstock that's attached to your body. So when your body's moving, if your buttstock's glued to your body and your body's moving, the gun's gonna move. So we have a couple of things that we teach at Fieldcraft on not overcomplicating shooting and moving, because it's not that difficult, and then making you understand how to float the gun in between your hands and your body, so you're not adhering it to your physical body to displace the gun all over the place while you're moving. Okay, so I'm gonna have Addison bring the gun up on target, and I'm gonna have him simply walk forward as he is right now without shooting, and just walk so you guys can see it. Go ahead, walk. Index. Good. So what I want you to notice in, go ahead, do that again. What I want you to notice in Addison, go, is he's walking like he would normally walk, except he's now holding the rifle in the position in front of him, and he's shooting. Like I joke about this, but I say, you know, hey, my block of instructions for shooting and moving is, I just want you to walk, and I just want you to shoot. It's not that complicated. So where we get complicated is when we start introducing all these different tactics for people. Remember, people, again, are built differently. Like if I taught you a technique in to roll your feet and drop your hips, a lot of people can't physically do that. So, if I say instead, I want you to walk, and then I want you to isolate the firearm and not adhere the buttstock to your shoulder, then it's going to work out better. In fact, I want you guys to see his buttstock and how he's going to float it using 2 points of contact. Now, he doesn't have to keep it out here like floated. He could keep it here, but he doesn't have to pull it in aggressively. Go ahead and pull it in aggressively and walk, and then show people what it looks like when you're just walking with that. Yeah. Every time he steps, he's clunky. With an exaggeration, he's going to end up having the rifle move up and down. If he just floats his hands, right, 2 isolated points of contact, and he's floating it, it's making contact, but it's not adhered, it's not being pulled back on, and then he walks, go ahead and walk, then he can isolate the rifle in its position. And that's the effective way in which we're gonna shoot and move. And it's very simple. All right, go ahead, we're gonna shoot through this duration. So on this run, I want you to walk towards the still target, shoot, and then when you're done, we will turn back around. All right, shooter ready? Stand by, go. Index, good. So not that difficult to do. He's simply walking, moving, and shooting. Now, there is a probability of you increasing speed and decreasing your hit probability. Somebody once asked me on a range, said, hey, Mike, when I get closer, should I shoot faster? And the answer is yes, because the probability of you getting hits the closer you get to the target start to increase the closer you get. So yes, it is not cheating in a gunfight to shoot faster the closer you get in proximity to the target. I would say as an advantage, distance in some cases can be an advantage. So if you have distance, it might mean that you have more time, which allows you to break that shot and take more time in taking a slow aim approach versus just sending rounds downrange. Now, something else that we teach is lateral movement across the objective. The most difficult thing to do in combat or in a gunfight is hit a lateral moving target. That's because I'm forced to track you from your position. Like, let's say I'm a threat right here. Well, if I back up 10 feet, I've only changed a couple centimeters in distance or width. But if I turn myself sideways and I move out, I'm forcing the shooter to track you, which is more difficult to do and one of the most difficult things to do. So let's say if you're just only moving in depth or out of depth. So you're creating distance, but it's linear. Well, the deviation versus a miss versus a hit is slight. This is a miss, this is a hit because of the cone of where the bad guy is located, or in this case, the good guy who's trying to hit the bad guy. So if you want to win a gunfight, lateral movement is going to increase your probability of not getting hit. We do this with law enforcement and military and civilians with simunitions, but it's been proven very effective because when you have to track a moving target, there's so many variables that you have to consider all at once. The speed of the target, the distance to the target, the speed or the muzzle velocity of the round that you're shooting, and then your appropriate hold in that. So if I have to think about all these things at the same time I'm moving, it's very problematic. So if you want to survive, you need to get used to moving and shooting laterally across the target. What we're going to do is I'm going to have him walk in one direction with his feet oriented in one specific path. If I'm having him going left to right, he's simply walking left to right, and then I'm going to have him walk right to left in the same way. What I mean is his feet are going to be pointed towards the direction of travel, and his gun's going to be oriented towards the threat. So I don't want him sidestepping as he's moving across to address the target, because this speed, which is slow now, needs to be quick after the fact. Okay, ready? Move. Index. So you notice his feet were pointed in the direction of travel, and the gun's oriented here. Now, at some point, he might get pushed to a point in which he can't traverse his upper body. So the only thing he's going to do is turn and pivot his feet, moving backwards. So let's do that same thing, but no shooting. I just want him to watch. Let's zoom in on his footwork. I want you to see his footwork specifically in this movement. Go ahead, move. So he's moved, he's kind of running out of room. He simply just moves his feet backwards. And that's critical because no place naturally do you move through space and do this, right? You don't do that. You only do that on an airplane or a bus when you're giving somebody the crotch or the butt, but you don't do it naturally. So what I mean is, a lot of people have said you never move backwards or walk backwards in a gunfight. Well, that's not true, because I could walk just effectively backwards as I do forward, because it's just reversed in motion. It's just doing this, right? So now, if I want to get good at this, when I'm moving from right to left, for example, I'm coming here, and this is my hard side because I'm right-handed. So as I'm driving here, I'm already out of distance. So instead of just committing to this awkwardness, I'm simply just going to rotate my legs, and now I have the efficiency and the means to traverse my upper body in this space. And that's super important, right? Because you want to be ergonomic, and you want to open up your gait to allow you to push your upper body across the objective. And you can only do that if you have the right footwork. This is like that CQB salsa that we talk about. So again, on this side, I'm moving left to right. I'm here. I'm on my easy side. I run out of room. I'm simply going to take my feet and rotate them and kick them the opposite direction, and then I have more room to chew off. Now, speed is important, but not to where you outrun your headlights, where your fundamentals and the effectiveness of the rounds that you're sending downrange fall apart. Now, that's not an end-all be-all, because suppression is almost better than anything in some cases, versus you lolling and taking your sweet butt time and not doing anything as far as speed of getting your ass off the X. So you need a good combination of getting your ass off the X but being effective as a gunfighter. I hope that helps, guys. All right, guys, one of the final things that we need to talk about is the culmination exercise. Now, culmination, which is the introduction of stress in technical skill sets or fundamentals, is critical in evaluating where your technical skills are. What I mean is, you could practice all the technical script writing of instilling the right movement and how you shoot and how you move. But unless you've introduced stress, which is a combination of physical stress and psychological stress, you haven't vetted or validated those technical skills. So I talk about emulation or emulators a lot. It's very easy to run around on a flat range and shoot paper and still, especially if it's choreographed or practiced. The difficult thing is making decisions, meaning using your cognition, enacting technical skill sets or scripts, and doing that while elevating your levels of stress. Different ways to elevate stress are making things a competition, which is a combination of psychological and physical stress, scoreable targets, a pro timer and analyzing time and shot sequence, and physical stress, literally physically stressing somebody. When you're in flux with cortisol and neuroepinephrine and in your surge with the adrenaline, what's happening is your heart rate is accelerating. Well, you need to be able to replicate that and then replicate the performance window, the optimal performance window of you operating in about a 70 to 80 to 90% bracket of your overall heart rate. So what I mean is, if you just go out and you're very comfortable and you're relaxed, you're probably going to do fairly well. Well, if you want to increase your performance, you get in that optimal window, and that's typically 70 to 90% of your BPM or beats per minute. And if you want to push the limits, get yourself beyond that 90% threshold and see where things start falling apart. It's only then in the culmination can you determine what technical skills you need to take back to the drawing board, isolate, re-practice, rehearse, and then reintroduce into the culmination cycle. We call this phase of training the stress shoot. So I'm going to have Addison set up a mini stress shoot and show you guys a little bit of stress of what it looks like when you're running and gunning and how that translates to increasing your overall technical performance.